Early voting is going to get underway on this Tuesday, May the 28th, here in the great state of South Carolina. The period or the time this morning will get underway at 8:30. So you have until 5 o'clock today if you want to vote for today. If you can't get it together today, for a lot of folks, you're coming off of a holiday. We get it. You have this whole week, including next week, through Friday, June the 7th, to vote early. Those polls are open every day, 8:30 to 5. And there are four locations where you can vote early. And they include the York Technical College at Baxter Hood Center at York Tech, Clinton College Library, Carolina's Cornerstone there in Fort Mill, and the Election Board office in York. And again, you can do so from 8:30 to 5. You do not need to live in said city to vote. So let's say you are from Clover, but you're doing some business in Fort Mill. You can swing by there and vote. But do keep this in mind. Wherever you're voting early, whenever you give them your address, your ballot is connected to your address. So if you want to vote in, let's say, someone who's running for an office in Clover, and you're thinking, I don't live in Clover, but if I vote in Clover, I can vote for that candidate. Nope.
Doesn't work that way.
That ballot is connected to your address wherever you're voting. And then, of course, you vote on June the 11th. That is the primary day. Well, of course, to arm you with knowledge, you need to hear from these candidates, and there's an opportunity to do so this Thursday, May the 30th. We have Twana Burris-Alcide.
You said it correctly.
Thank you.
That's right.
Joining us here on Palmetto Mornings. Good morning to you, Twana.
Great morning, Mr. McFadden.
So the Minority Business Leaders Network is hosting this meet and greet for these candidates in this forum on Thursday, May the 30th.
Yes.
And the candidates include those running for solicitor.
That's correct.
And then those candidates running for
sheriff.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So before we dive into that, give us some background and history about the Minority Business Leaders Network.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. The Minority Business Leaders Network is a nonprofit. It's based upon Kingdom Christian principles. Basically what it is we help to provide a collaborative, collective, entrepreneurial network. Business owners, community members. And what we do is we come together to help influence the different spheres of society. It was very interesting that initially when you started talking about the media. And so it's based upon the 7 mountains of influence. Well, what is that? The 7 mountains of influence is the 7 spheres of society. And it talks about that God should be involved in every area. Those are the primary spheres of society, right? And so, of course, there are many different spheres of society. Wherever we are, we should carry Christ with us. You know, if we're working in the government, we should carry Christ with us, right? So ourselves and Christ should not be inseparable because the Bible tells we are the church, okay? And we take ourselves, right, into these places, into these different spheres of society in order to influence, okay, the entire area of influence, okay? You have the media, you have arts and entertainment, you have business, you have government, family, education, and religion. And so those are the primary areas of influence. Okay, and so the Minority Business Leaders is chosen as a vehicle to apply kingdom principles in these 7 primary areas of influence. Again, there are different areas. You have healthcare. You have, of course, your medical, and you have so many different industries of influence. But the 7 primary are the ones that I actually just named. When I relocated back in 2003 into my hometown in Rock Hill, I was appointed as a leader over the youth at Gethsemane Church. And I was talking to the youth, and I said, let's think about the American government, and let's come up with a biblical scripture, right? And so the scripture that we came up with was, righteousness exalteth a nation. Sin is a reproach to all people. And so there was an oratorical competition, and there was an essay competition. And simply it is that the recipe for success, okay, is righteousness, okay? It says it exalts a nation, our world, America, okay? But sin is a reproach to all people. And so when we think about the government, we want leaders who function with integrity, who have a moral compass, who has compassion, leaders who specifically when we think about like the York County Sheriff's Office, they have to manage a budget. I believe it's about $55 million a year. You know, who has the leadership skills to do that? Who has the finance background to do that? Who has the strategic planning skills? Who can think long term in leading this agency? Even in regards to the solicitor's office, who will function with the moral compass, who will be compassionate when we're talking about, you know, people, who will treat all people fairly. I'm not sure if I told you, but I am African American. And so, and I was born African American. And so we want to make sure that we place those leaders in place who can see out of the lens of God, that sees as God sees. Who's very sensitive and see as God sees, carry the same lens as God. And so that's the whole infiltration. The leaders that we put in place, it tells us what is the recipe for success. The recipe for success is righteousness will exalt a nation. But if there's sin, it's a reproach. It affects all people. It affects all people in the community. Who's placed in that leadership position will infect or affect and impact the entire community.
We just went to church
in
5 minutes.
It's like
it's
it's the ripple effect, the pure heart's intention, but the skills with the moral heart. I mean, I'm taking all of this, like you said, she just took us to church.
Well, it's common sense stuff, and we often say that's missing today. You need to take your message and go straight to Washington, D.C. Because they need to live on those 7 principles because they definitely don't.
We will replay that.
That moral compass is definitely needed.
I think it's important. And what I was going to add, and I apologize, I do talk a lot, but what I was going to add is that, you know, you want to make sure that when you're thinking about these agencies, right? Because you're talking about the sheriff's office and you're talking about the solicitor's office, that who has the ability to keep our communities clean? Who's thinking about our businesses? Who's thinking about our elderly people, our veteran, our youth? Because we have to think about the future.
So on Thursday, May the 30th, from 5 to 7:30, you've invited all the candidates again for solicitor and the 5 candidates for the sheriff's office.
That is correct.
To this forum. Everyone is welcome in the community.
Every single person in the community, because we are all affected by who's in leadership position in those respective positions. So, yes.
And it's important to note here in South Carolina, despite how and where you get your news, which you should always get your news locally, here in South Carolina, we do not register by party. So no matter if you typically vote Republican or typically vote Democratic, in this primary, you can vote. For sure. And here in South Carolina, it's no surprise. We're typically a very heavy Republican state. But there are times where there are Democratic candidates. Now, these candidates who are running in June or for these offices, they're all Republican. So this is an opportunity to hear directly from them. What will be the format on Thursday? Like, is it a Q&A? Is it in terms of folks from the audience? Will there be questions submitted from the community that will be asked to these candidates? Walk us through what that event Thursday looks like.
So we will open the doors at the Freedom Center, 215 East Main Street at 5 o'clock. We will have the candidates in a meet and greet room in the cafe, which is located in the Freedom Center, within the confines of the Freedom Center. And you will have the candidates there. They will have the opportunity to meet the public starting at 5 o'clock. And once they meet the public, we have a select panel of community members whom will interview these candidates privately. And so you have 2 different settings. You have the York County Solicitor candidates in the back, and we have about 10 persons from the community. Some include the legal profession, some include the medical profession, some are just your community members, and they're actually going to interview the solicitor candidates individually and privately in a room. And then you also have the York County Sheriff interview room. It's a private panel, select community members. Many of them are retired law enforcement officers who will actually serve on that panel and asking individually these candidates questions in a private setting. And so the candidates will simply go to the meet and greet room, and then one by one, they are actually asked to transition into the individual private room And then, of course, while the individuals are in there, you'll have the other candidates still in the meet and greet room with the community members, so that the community members will have the opportunity to meet, interact, engage with these candidates. Why? When we vote for the candidate who is ripe, RIPE, and right for this community, that's someone who has the ability and authority to keep our communities safe. Why? I have a business here. My children live here. My parents live here. My family live here. My friends are here. The community's here. So this person must have the aptitude to run the agency, whether the solicitor's office or the sheriff's office. And so once they leave those individual private interviews, they are then transitioned and ushered into the church. On the stage individually, and they will be asked questions that will actually come through a moderator, but they'll be asked questions on the stage, and the community will have the opportunity to hear their answer in public.
So this is Thursday, May the 30th, from 5 to 7:30. These candidates have all been invited. The two for solicitor, you've got Kevin Brackett and Tyler Bratton.
Yes.
And then the 5 candidates for York County Sheriff, Tony Breeden, Chris Blevins, Beth Tolson, Heath Clevenger, and Michael Belt. I am going to steal, Twana, the phrase ripe and right, because you're ripe. You're ripe, and then you're right.
Ripe and righteous, too.
Yes, that's great. Okay, well, you have provided us with a lot of information, and again, kudos to the Minority Business Leaders Network for providing another platform for voters to hear directly from the candidates themselves. Get out there. It is obviously free. It is Thursday, May the 30th, beginning at 5 o'clock, and this is at Freedom Temple Ministries, but within the building, it's at the Freedom Center. So
that's correct.
There'll be folks there to guide you.
Yes.
Twana, Burris-Alcide, thank you so much. We appreciate the knowledge
and
for helping us make sure our moral compass is pointing north.
That's right.